Well, good morning. My name is Dr. Jenna Ross, and I am a sport and performance consultant and mental performance trainer and the host of today's podcast, Get Your Head in the Game, which we talk all things mental health related, mindset related, and sports as it pertains to the game of life. And hopefully some athletes out there can gain some understanding and some helpful tips and hints on how to optimize their mindset. And I'm super excited for today. We have a very special guest, Bertrand Berry, former Arizona Cardinals player, all-pro player in 2004, and now owns his own business, the B Train Station, in which he mentors and leads and trains young up-and-coming athletes in the same position that he held. And so super excited to have you here. I know that you are very busy being a father, being a business owner. And so thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited. I know you are venturing out on this new journey, and I'm so honored to take this journey with you.
Thank you. Yeah. So I would love to hear, I know you're kind of dealing with some home stuff right now with the hot water heater going on. And so, if we get interrupted, that's okay. But I would just love, we talked about your journey kind of as a player, as an athlete. But now, in your role, as a business owner, like what you're seeing in other athletes, and maybe, giving some insight to somebody that's wants to take it to the next level, the things that maybe you could share with them and give them some insight into your journey and what you learned as far as the importance of mindset and mental health.
So with me personally, my journey took a lot of turns, and I think the one thing that people who are looking to embark on changing their life and going from one part to the next, you have to understand it's not going to be a direct line. There's going to be obstacles, there's going to be setbacks, there's going to be things that are going to test you. So you cannot get frustrated. You have to think long term. You have to think the long game. You can't think what's right in front of you is what's going to be forever. And so with my story, as we shared, I was drafted by the Indianapolis Colts. Then I was out of the league for a year. I was fortunate enough to get another opportunity with the Denver Broncos, and there was setback even there. And that setback was just a setup for a comeback. And I was able to transition here to Arizona and find a home, and things really took off from there. So you have to be patient, and you have to stick to it. You cannot fall and waver at any sign of adversity. You have to be mentally tough, as we talk about, and be able to persevere through some of those difficult times.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about your experience going from being drafted for the Colts, and then you mentioned there was a gap. So you played for the Colts, and then contract ended, and you were kind of left like, now what do I do? Talk to me about that for a moment.
Very stressful. I really felt if I was drafted, I felt that I had a plan. I was going to play 10 years, and then I would leave the game happy and healthy and all those type of good things with a little money in my pocket. Things didn't turn out that way. After my first contract, I felt like I was not put in the right positions to succeed. The coaches didn't have a lot of faith in me. They thought that I was a bust, and they weren't quite sure where I fit in to the overall scheme of the team. And so ultimately they decided to part ways, and there was a lot of uncertainty. That year that I was out of the league, there were a lot of things that set in. We talked about, I believe I suffered from depression. There were times where I did not want to go outside. I didn't like watching football, very irritable, just not a very nice person. And through the course of that time, there were people that were trying to reach out, but I just couldn't see it because I was so stuck in the right here, right now. And as long as you're stuck in the right here, right now, and you don't take a step back and just survey the whole scene, then you're going to be stuck in that situation for longer than you need to. And unfortunately, I was. And it took a miraculous call from the Denver Broncos, who gave me an opportunity to just try out. And they gave me a call on New Year's Day of 2001. And I really thought that I was going to have to transition out of football. I thought my career was over.
Mm-hmm.
And I was starting to put together a resume based on my degree from school. And they gave me that call. And from that moment on, everything changed. And so, big shout out to Rick Smith, who at the time was the director of player personnel with the Denver
Okay.
Broncos, for taking a chance on me, because I
Wow.
felt like in some ways he really saved me from going a completely different direction.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. That's huge. So in that moment, when you got that call, was
Mhm.
it like I have to take this type of feeling, or was it still a little bit of hesitation that you were done? Like you were done with the sport, you were done with what you had thought was going to happen.
Oh, there was no hesitation. There was, this is it. This is my last chance. If it
Okay.
doesn't happen here, it's not going to happen. So I put everything I had into that workout, Jenna, and I went
Mhm.
up to Denver and I had the workout of my life, because all of that frustration, all of that anger, all of that anxiousness, I just put into that hour and however long it was. And I was able to channel it in a positive
Mhm.
way
Mhm.
and really use it as motivation. But it was, when I was done, I was so emotionally drained. I just slept for 2 3 days afterwards, because
Wow. Yeah.
I just couldn't imagine that my football career was over. But there was nothing giving me any
Mhm.
indication that it was, until I got that
Mhm.
call and ultimately that workout.
Wow. So that one moment kind of changed the trajectory for you. And,
No question.
I think the important part about that is that you didn't give up, right? Where it was a year of uncertainty and not kind of knowing what was going to happen. And maybe this was it, maybe this was the end. But that moment where it was like, okay, no, it's not over yet. Keep going, right? And so I think, yeah, go ahead. I think with that, have something to share with your experience with that.
Well, for me, it was, there were a lot of different things that crept into my thinking. There was self doubt, like, was I not quite the player that I thought I was? There was this not meant to be? Was I only supposed to play for 3 years? And there were a lot of different questions and a lot of scenarios that came into my mind, because I just
Mhm.
didn't know what was going on. I had this big plan. I was going to play 10 years and walk away from the game, and it didn't go according to the script. So
Mhm.
there was that, what do I do now? I didn't have a plan B, and it really exposed a lot of where I was as a person, as a man
Mhm.
at that stage in my life. And so it showed me that I had a lot of work to do on myself. But then,
Mhm.
even from a professional standpoint, it showed that, okay, this could be taken away from you at any moment. So you need to have something else to fall back on if this doesn't go according to script.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned, you said the word depression there. So
Yes.
talk to me about that. What do you feel like looking back at that was kind of some key indicators for you to realize maybe I am struggling with a little bit of depression. Maybe this is something that is happening for me in this moment, right?
Just a negative mindset. I
Mhm.
was never a negative person. I was usually a very happy-go-lucky, and everything is cool, and everything will always work out. I didn't have much of that during that
Mhm.
time. I really felt like I was very critical of different players if I watched games, when I watched them. My attitude, it was very sarcastic, very very to myself, didn't want to be around a lot of people. I
Mhm.
wanted the room dark all the time. I didn't want any light in the
Mhm.
house at all. And I just felt myself really want to be by myself. And that's something that's so not me, because I'm a very outgoing person.
Right.
I really love interacting with people. And I just felt like my spirit was just different. I felt like I,
Mhm.
I felt defeated.
Mhm.
And I was frustrated by that, because I'm an ultra competitive person, and I couldn't understand why I was taking a loss at the time.
Mhm.
And it I felt helpless, like I couldn't do anything about it. And I think that was probably the most frustrating thing about the entire situation.
Oh, absolutely. That feeling of helplessness. So looking back now, you were able to overcome that, right? But in
Mm-hmm.
that moment, you didn't know. If we kind of
Mm-hmm.
look backwards, it's always easy to see. But in the moment, right, we can never tell. And
Right.
I think, like you said, keeping that perspective on things rather than just what's right in front of you sounds like
Mhm.
maybe that was the key for you to overcome that.
It was, and
Yeah.
also after the fact, I was able to go back and talk to family members and friends, and really kind of ask their viewpoint of where I was at that time. And
Mm,
the feedback was not what I expected, but it's something that I needed to hear. And a lot of the people that I consider very close to me, that I care about their opinion, they said, "Hey, yeah, you were different, and we
mm,
we didn't want to upset you. We didn't want to add to it, but we knew that there was definitely something different and something wrong
mm,
with you, and just the way that you interacted with us." And
mm-hmm,
so that was a wake up call for me. And
mm,
knowing that the people that I loved the most and I depended on the most, I treated the worst.
mm-hmm.
So that was something that really stuck with me, and I've really tried since to make sure that I reverse that and really take
Yeah.
care and treat the people that love me the most the best.
Yeah, absolutely. That's good. So, talk to me then a little bit, kind of about like rebuilding yourself. You went on to play for the Broncos, and then after the Broncos, it was the Arizona Cardinals, and you had mentioned that was a process of building too. And so, what kind of kept you going through all of that, through all of those challenges of building, really, and not necessarily seeing immediate results?
I think once I got the opportunity to play the game again, it really changed how I approached the game. I really felt like my approach was bad in a sense that I took it for granted. I just thought, well, I'm such an athletic person, I could just go out there and do whatever it is that I want. Never taking into account that where you fit and what people think about you, and how you handle yourself and how you carry yourself, those things matter. And so what I did was I developed an attitude of every play could be your last play, and play
Mm,
every down like it could be your last one, and don't leave anything left to chance. Always give the extra effort, because you just don't know when your last play will be. And so it completely changed my mind for the good
yeah.
and for the better. And it really made me the player that I ultimately became. And I don't think without that adversity in
Hmm.
2000 that I would have ever been able to enjoy what I was able to enjoy in Denver, and to a larger scale what I was able to enjoy here in Arizona.
Yeah, absolutely. So, having that mindset of this could be my very last play was like, leave it all out there. I have nothing to lose at this point. Right. And knowing where you came from, where you had lost it, right? You had almost lost everything that you had thought was going to happen. And so, having a mindset of nothing to lose sounds like was very, very helpful for you to keep that building going, right? Because it wasn't just you. You mentioned, I think, when you were on the Arizona Cardinals, that it was starting out, right? You kind of had a vision of where you were going with it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, share with me about that process of building, leading, being a leader, not just for yourself, but for the people around you.
I think for me, the thing that started it all was the first season with the Denver Broncos, going all the way back to then. The fact that I was given that second chance, and to build a rapport not only with the coaching staff and the teammates and the fan base as well, there was an appreciation that they had for a person like me. Because of course you've heard the cliche, play like it's your last play, but I had actually lived it already. So
Mm-hmm,
my biggest fear was going back to that. And
mm-hmm,
I had a determination that I was never going to have the game taken away from me. I would walk away on my terms the very next time I decided to step away from this game. And so building that for those 3 years in Denver ultimately gave me an opportunity to speak with Coach Dennis Green, who at the
mm-hmm,
time had just gotten a job here in Arizona. And he said, I want to build my defense around you. I've seen how you've grown these 3 years in Denver, and I've seen how you've taken on the leadership role, even though I wasn't a quote unquote leader. The
mm-hmm,
way that you approach the game, and that's something that a lot of people can get behind, and young players can emulate. Because when you, as a older veteran, are doing those little things and not taking a play off, they can't help but do the same thing. And so
mm-hmm,
it excited me for the opportunity to actually be a leader, because for the first time in my career, even going back to college, I was considered a leader of one side of the ball. And I didn't want to give that up, considering where I'd come from back in 2000.
Wow.
That opportunity and that chance to really make my imprint on an organization. And so I took it, and I took it very seriously, and I tried my best to, in every situation, on the field, off the field, in the community, at home, to just try to be the best version of myself that I could be. Of course, I'm not perfect. Of course, I made mistakes,
Yeah.
but the intent was there to always try to do my best. And so I think I was able to accomplish that to some degree. And I was able to go to the Pro Bowl and be an All Pro my very first year here. And
Yeah.
so that was very gratifying. And I think that selection was really a culmination of everything that had happened up to that point. And it was a big crescendo, and it was extremely gratifying. I remember being
Yeah.
very emotional getting that call and getting that nod, and Coach Dennis Green bringing up the team and telling me
Wow.
that I was selected to the Pro Bowl, the only one that year for the
Wow.
Cardinals. And I the overwhelming sense of joy and pride and feeling accomplished. It's like, hard work does pay off. And so very, very
Yeah.
fortunate to have had that experience, and it's a moment that I'll never forget.
Yeah. What I mean, a comeback, but also proof that, your, like you said, your hard work does pay off. I think sometimes we get caught in the moment of not seeing those results now, that we are focused on, well, it's not making a difference now, and I'm not seeing the fruit of it now. But for you, it was a matter of sticking with it, and then a couple of years of hard work. It wasn't just one day or a week or a month. It was years of hard work and committing, I think, for you, of deciding, this is who I'm going to be, and this is what I'm going to do with what's in front of me. So I love that. I love that you share, that part of your story, because it does go to show, like, how important it is to make that decision of who, this is who I am. No matter what comes against me, I know I'm going to put this amount of effort in and be this type of person. So I love that you share that. That's a good part of the story to share with, other athletes going through things in their life. So,
You have to take advantage of those second chances. I just want to say that to all those young
yeah,
athletes. If things don't go according to script the first chance, you will get a second chance, but you have to make good on that second chance. Don't assume anything. Give it everything you got. Every time you step on the field, make them say your name in a positive way.
yeah, I love that. Yeah. So, going from Broncos to Cardinals, and then, kind of the transition, right? Well, let me back up, because the Cardinals, right, the year they went to the Super Bowl, you were there, right? That was a big,
So
pretty big, probably rewarding moment. Let's talk about that for a second, if we can, what that was like.
So I remember when I first got here, and of course, I was saying how Denny Green wanted me to be a leader. I remember the press conference like it was yesterday. I'm sitting on a table, a lifted table, and there's at least 10, 15 media people out there, and it's Denny Green to my left, and there's Mr. Bidwell to my right, who's now passed, God rest his soul. And I remember making the statement that I'm going to go to a Pro Bowl and I'm going to go to a Super Bowl. And I remember the media laughing. And I remember that moment, and it stuck with me my entire time here with the Arizona Cardinals. And at that point, all that did was just give me more fuel. And the thing that I didn't say was, as a uber competitive person, anytime somebody said I couldn't do something, I was bound and
Oh,
determined to
yeah.
prove you wrong.
Yep.
And so from that press conference, March 7th, 2004, I was dead set on helping this team get to a Super Bowl and ultimately winning one. And I came up just short with the second part of that, but the fact that we were able to get to one and represent the NFC in the Super Bowl, it's something that people
Yeah.
still look at it with disbelief. They still talk about how grown people were crying in the stands, and players were crying on the field, and there's just that, we
Yeah.
can't believe what we just accomplished. Well, I could, because I knew if we had the
Mm-hmm.
talent and we had the right mindset and right focus, we were going to get to where we wanted to go. The interesting thing, real quick, about that season was that the season didn't go like we wanted it to go. We were 9-7. We weren't
Mm-hmm.
a great team. But the thing that we did was we found that spark at the right time. We just needed to get in the playoffs and get in that tournament. And once we
Mm-hmm.
got in that tournament, we were able to come together, be singular minded, and focused on the same goal. And we were able to do some things that no one, and I repeat, no one thought we were going to
Yeah.
be able to do.
Yeah, I love that. Saying that, we weren't a great team, but you knew what you had to do, right? Sometimes I think we get so overwhelmed by this idea. If you had thought, we're going to make it to the Super Bowl this year and starting out on day one, that's a big, right? That's a big, lofty goal. But it was like, we just had to win this next game. The game that's in front
Yes.
of us, we just have to win that game. And then the
Yes.
next game comes, we have to win that game, and kind of breaking it down into chunks, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
not this big, grand, lofty thing. It's like, just do the next thing that's in front of you type of
That's correct.
mentality. Yeah.
That's correct.
So I love that
We
you
wanted
share that.
we wanted to just shock the world, because again, we had our bumps in the road during the course
Mm-hmm.
of that season, and everybody has the optimism at the beginning of the season. We're going to the Super Bowl. We're going to do this. We're going to do that.
Yeah.
But our biggest goal was to just win the division,
Mm-hmm.
and that was our first goal before we ever stepped on the field as a collective team. We talked about just winning the division first, and then once we did that, that put us in the tournament. That gave us an opportunity, and then from there we could go
Yeah.
on and try to accomplish everything that we had set out to do. And so we set minor goals
Mm-hmm.
to achieve the big goal. So
Yeah.
we had to get to that first goal first, and then everything after that just flowed along. And once we caught that fire, it was just it was a magical ride. I mean, I
Yeah.
still remember everything about that year, and that run, and just the electricity that was
Mm-hmm.
in Phoenix and in Arizona at the time, because again, the Cardinals hadn't
Yeah.
had a lot of success, and of course no one thought we were capable of making that kind of
Right.
run, but it made it that much sweeter to
Right.
actually prove them all wrong.
Yeah, that's a huge thing. You mentioned being a competitive person, and anytime somebody says you can't do something, how it immediately says, well, just
Watch me.
watch me, right? Like, that's exactly
That's
the
right.
type of mentality you need to have. And so I think it's interesting that you said, I said I'm going to be an all pro player and I'm going to go to the Super Bowl. And
Mm-hmm.
you spoke those words, and the power in speaking those things of what you're going to do, and this is my goal. And it was kind of like, for you, I know you mentioned this of deciding, it didn't matter what other people said about me or what other people thought, right? This is what I
Mm-hmm.
was going to do. And it
Mm-hmm.
was you, whether they supported you or didn't support you, you knew in your mind, this is where I'm going.
This is what I felt. I
Mm-hmm.
believed it 1,000%. And you're right. When you speak things out, those things matter, and whether it's positive or it's negative. So I always tell my kids, and I tell the guys that I train, be careful with what you say. Your words
Yeah.
matter,
Mm-hmm.
because how you speak to yourself makes all the difference in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so, more times than not, I feel myself being more of a a motivational coach than
Mm-hmm.
I am an actual X's and O's coach, because you have to really
Yeah.
change the mindsets of these young men, and
Mm-hmm.
and young men, young women as well. But you
Mm-hmm.
really have to make them believe that what they say about themselves, even
Yeah.
more than what they say about others, is really going to form what they think about themselves. So
Mm-hmm.
always be complimentary
Sure.
of
Yeah.
yourself, and believe in yourself, because if you don't, no
Yeah.
one else will.
Yeah, you're helping them believe in the possibility. I think
That's
people
correct.
automatically, we say that we get in our own way sometimes, is because we do, and
Most
but
times.
yeah, we put limits on our ability. And so I love that you're in a position now where you can inspire that in younger athletes, and really push them to believe that it is possible, because sometimes they just need, like you got that phone call from the Denver Broncos that turned it around for you, and sometimes you just need that one person to say, hey, like, I believe in you, right? This is possible and you're going to do this. And then they start to see it. Oh yeah, this is possible. And then they believe it themselves. So super important to have maybe one or two people in your life that are like that.
Just one. Just
Yeah.
one, doctor. Just one,
Yeah.
Dr. Jenna. Just one. That's all you want.
Just one. Yeah. The right voice, right?
Just one. That's
Yeah.
right.
So I love that. I love that you share that words are powerful and they really do kind of create your environment for you. How now, you're running a business, you're running, a business that actually trains and mentors athletes.
Mm-hmm.
You shared you're more of a motivational coach sometimes than an X's and O's. So talk to me about this
Mm-hmm.
balance of giving people the instruction, but also behind the scenes of how can I build them as a person, right?
So when I decided to do this business, because I had worked with Under Armour for a few years prior to doing this on my own, I always said to myself, okay, if I'm going to do something like this by myself, I have to be authentic. They have to see the real me. I cannot put on a facade. I can't try to put on a front and be something that I'm not. They're going to get the real 100% authentic me. That's not perfect. That's not always politically correct in what I say or what I do, but they're going to get the real me. I'm going to try to be as professional as I can at all times, but that I'm not going out there trying to say everything right or do everything right. I always want to treat each guy like he needs to be treated at that moment. And I'm not going to treat every guy the same because I go from ages 10 to 32. So there's a lot of different levels of development between a 10-year-old and a 32-year-old. So you can't, by design, you can't treat a 10-year-old like you treat a 32-year-old. How I speak to a 32-year-old is different than how I speak to a 10 or a 17 or even a 20-year-old. So you have to be flexible. You have to be able to adapt to the different personalities. You have to be able to let them understand that I care about you first before they ever want to know what I can tell them. So there is that balance of, yeah, I have to be a motivational coach. I have to be able to earn their trust first and foremost, because if there's no trust, there is no communication. If they don't trust me, they're not listening to anything I say. And that goes from the 10 all the way up to 32.
Right.
No matter what age you are, you know when somebody's faking it in front of you. And so before I ever get into on the field, I want to get to know them. I want to ask them different questions. One of the first questions I ask is, what's your nickname? What do your friends call you? Because I want them to automatically take those barriers down, because everybody has that, hey, we're business like, when we first meet, firm handshake, look them in the eye, all this. But once we take those barriers down and we start to really talk to each other, then that's where you start to get the magic. That's where all the magic happens. So I had to really say, hey, be authentic, be who you are, but then at the same time, show them that you believe in them. Because if they think you look at them as just a paycheck or an opportunity or just a business deal, then they're never going to fully open up to you, and you'll never get that magic that you're ultimately desiring.
Yeah, I love that. It's starting at square one. Sometimes we jump ahead of ourselves, right? But you mentioned adapting. And so I think that's so important, is being adaptable. And for you, as in your experience as a leader, as a player, and being able to adapt to the different circumstances, but then also not just you personally adapting, but adapting your leadership to their needs, to what you see as their needs. And so super important, because everyone, I do a lot of talks on like leadership with people. And I think that a lot of people have different theories on leadership and what it is, what it's not, and the right way, the wrong way. And really it's like what you said, it's adapting to the needs of that person. And yeah, so talk to me about that a little bit, like how you came to that point.
So I ultimately said I wanted to be the coach I always wanted to have.
Mm.
And that could mean different things on different days. That doesn't mean that you are always the same, because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I can be jovial with the guys, but sometimes I have to be able to rein it in and be authoritative too, because
Mm-hmm.
all those things are good, but they got to respect you at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And so there always has to be that level of respect in that, okay, I have something to give you. We're not on the same level.
Mm-hmm.
But there we can laugh, we can joke, and we can do all those things. But when it comes down to it, I am paid by your parents, or
Mm-hmm.
you're paying me to do a specific job.
Right.
I'm going to do my job first and foremost. Anything that
Yeah.
blossoms after that, that's extra, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
But I just always looked at all my different experiences, and I had a ton of coaches from 9 years old when I started to 34 when I ultimately retired. There were a lot of different personalities
Mm-hmm.
and different types of coaches that I encountered throughout my playing career. And so I took the best of all those different situations. And
Mm-hmm.
I always said, if I were to be in a position of a coach, this is the type of coach that I would want to be. And so I took all of that in and meshed it together,
Mm-hmm.
and really tried to come up with this coach that could adapt
Yeah.
to any personality that I saw, and still have that underlying theme of love
Yeah.
all the way through it. As long
Mm-hmm.
as you've got love, if there's love in it, it's gonna affect the way you speak. It's gonna affect the way that you move. It's gonna affect
Yeah.
everything. So when they know that you generally have love for them, it makes everything so much easier. Your communication, their
Mm-hmm.
ability to internalize it, all those
Mm-hmm.
different things come off so much differently when the love is there.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. That's the one component that a lot of people forget, I think, is because it becomes all about me and my needs and what I need, right? But when love is there, you're able to see, oh, there's this person in front of me who has these needs, right? And so I love that you say that. That's a good thing to mention is how you can see other people in that way, rather than this just being all about yourself, and all about what I need in this moment. And for younger athletes coming up and growing up, you said you started when you were 9, right? And played through high school, through college, right? And this idea that it's all about me, it's like you have to forsake that, right? As soon as you probably for you, I don't know, you can share on this, but the moment that you realize like it's not just about me, right? There's a whole team out here that needs me to be at my best, right? And if I'm going to be at my best, that's going to contribute to the team, and the rest of the team can be at their best, right? So it all works together.
Yep.
So I love, in your journey of realizing that, hey, this isn't just about me. And yeah, like I was going to say, for younger athletes growing up, how or what would you say to them to get out of that mindset that it's all about them?
The thing that I would say to them is, what is your end game? Do you want to be a great player and be a great player on teams that don't do anything? Or do you want to be a champion?
Mm-hmm.
To be a champion, you're going to need your teammates in order to accomplish that goal. No one in the NFL, and that's why I love the game of football. I'm a big believer in all male children should play at least 1 year of contact football, because you learn so many life lessons in the game of football. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, I'm biased. Football has given me so much,
Yeah.
but there's the thought of, when you get knocked down, you get back up.
Mm-hmm.
Having to work with others to achieve a common goal. You don't
Yeah.
necessarily have to like everybody to work with
Right.
them, but as long as you're still working towards the same goal, you can get it done. How do
Mm-hmm.
you face coming back after a loss? How do you face not being
Mm-hmm.
thought of as the right person for
Right.
the job? And are you, if you're a backup, how do you interact with the person
Yeah.
that's playing in front of you. There's all types of lessons that are going to come up again and again and again in your life, well beyond your playing days, that I just feel like if you can get through one season of contact football, then you can basically get the blueprint for what your whole life is going to look like going forward. And so
Right.
um,
Yeah.
other sports are great. I'm not
Yeah.
knocking other sports, but with football, you're so dependent on others to achieve what you ultimately want. Now,
Mm-hmm.
if you're just a person that just wants to go out there and play a couple years and be the best version of you, hey, you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there are players out there, and that's fine. Everybody has different
Yeah.
motivations, but I wanted to be a champion. I wanted to put one of those big old rings on my finger,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted to have that title forever, because once you're given that title, they can never take it away from you. Just
Yeah.
like when we talked about All Pro, you had asked me how I
Yeah.
wanted to be introed at. I want to
Yeah.
be introduced as an All Pro because I worked so hard for it, and the backdrop of
Yeah.
my story makes that All Pro mean that much more to me.
Yep.
So uh,
Yeah.
it's important because of what I had to do to get it.
Mm-hmm.
And for being a champion, that's the same thing. In order for you to get it, you got to lose yourself and and
Mm-hmm.
and become totally about the team. And yes, you bring your skill sets to help the team, but you understand too that helping your teammate ultimately helps yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I know I shared a little bit of, you talk about being on a football team, and I had shared a little bit about my experience in the military, and I think it's
Mm,
just so important, even in that same environment, two different environments, but the idea of teamwork and really putting yourself aside for the greater good of the people around you. And at the end of the day, how that actually accomplishes your goal. Even though it seems counterintuitive, right? Because it's like, I have this idea in my head of what I want. If I put that aside for the sake of other people around me, I won't be able to achieve that. In actuality, like what you just told me, it's the opposite, right? Because you're all working
exactly right.
together, you're going to get what you want out of it if you're all working together.
That's right.
So yeah, great feedback for these younger athletes growing up. I think that it's hard because I think we live in entitled society these days that you get
Look
a
at me. Look at me. Look at
yeah,
me.
and you get a trophy for showing up, right? Like, hey, you
Oh
showed up,
no.
you get a trophy for showing up.
Please don't get me started with that one. Participation trophies do not get me started.
So here we are, right? Is now we've got to start building this younger generation of athletes without that mentality, because that we've kind of seen, at least now I feel like we've kind of seen the results of what that does. And sports is a great way to build not just the mental skills to perform in that sport, but like you said, in life, like football is a great way, a great analogy to take those same skills out into actual life, right? So
Absolutely.
yeah, so I think that's super important just for these younger athletes, high school, whatever age they're at, to realize like there's a bigger picture. It's not just them, but also what you're speaking to yourself is super important too. So I think those are kind of the two big things we talked on today. But yeah, I mean, this is great. I love this. This is good feedback and really helpful. And so talk to me about your business real quick. What do you do? Athletes that you train, because it's very specific, right? It's a niche that you do. So share a little bit of that before we finish this.
Okay, so the name of the business is Train Station, and this is my
Okay.
logo. I wear
Okay.
the logo just in case. What I do is I train young defensive linemen and
Mhm.
pass rushers. So defensive line is the focus, but there are other positions, i.e., outside linebackers or whatever that do rush the passer as well on a
Okay.
regular basis. And so I want to give them some of the skill sets that I was able to acquire over the years and pass that down to them, because the thing that you want is you want the game to continue to evolve and continue to get better. And with my 25 years of experience, I just felt that it would be a shame to let that all go to waste and not share that with anyone.
Mm.
The things that I was able to acquire, good and bad, they all helped me ultimately to be where I am today. And so if I would have had somebody like this when I was 9, 10 years old, who knows where my career would have gone? It may have
Yeah.
been exactly the same, but who knows? So I just want to be able to give young men the opportunity to work on their skills and sharpen their skills at a younger age and not have to wait so long like I did, being
Mm-hmm.
that I didn't know what my position was going to be until I got to Denver and lock in and do that year in and year out. I want to give them the chance that they can be good now so that they can continue to hone their skills throughout their
Mm-hmm.
career so they don't have to worry about having to learn new positions each and every year, because that
Yeah.
can be challenging. It's
Yeah.
not it's not the it's not a bad thing. It's not the end all. But if you can do the same thing constantly over a period of time,
Mm-hmm.
you can't help but get better at it.
Yeah, for sure. That consistency piece, super
Yes.
important. So, yeah, very unique in that you train that specific population, but I think it's something that's needed. Um, yeah.
The,
Uh,
the one thing I'll say too, real quick, I'm sorry, doctor.
that's all right.
The thing that I wanted to say too is during the course of this journey myself, I've been challenged in ways because I've had guys on the other side want to get that perspective in their training,
Uh-huh.
i.e., I've had offensive tackles want to
Mm-hmm.
come to me and train because they know how I think as a defensive lineman. They want to know those things so they can counter that. And quarterbacks have come to
Ah.
me, and because they know that they're my number one prey, they're my
Mm-hmm.
number one target of people that I want to go hit. So they want to sometimes get the training of how to avoid someone like me, and it forced me to kind of flip how I
Uh-huh.
train, and I loved it. I love that challenge, and I don't do a lot of
Yeah.
that, but I think in small pockets that can be beneficial. So I've really tried to
Yeah.
expand my total package, if you will, and
Yeah.
and 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 not just be in that small little comfort
Mm-hmm.
zone. And I've been stretched, and I got to say, I was much better for it coming out on the other side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome because it's kind of like go learn your enemy, right? Like essentially it's the enemy when you're thinking
That's right.
sports,
That's right.
right? Like let's go learn their tactics so then I can come back and be better on my side, knowing that this is what I should expect from that position that's going to be attempting to block me or do whatever, against me. Like let me go learn their tactics. So I love
Total
that. That's
genius
awesome.
on their part.
Yeah.
Total genius on their part. And it took me a while to really understand that, but once
Yeah.
I got it, I was like, okay, I'm
Yeah.
totally on board with it.
Yeah,
I
I
love
can
it.
I can support that, right? Like,
Yes,
you're at the
yes,
end of the day, everyone just wants to be better in their position. So
that's right. And it
yeah,
makes the game better. So it's all
yeah,
good.
yeah. Well, that's awesome. Any last words? What would you say? Maybe going back, through all of your experiences and the years, the many years that you played from college to the NFL, to the All Pro, to the Super Bowl, like all of these experiences, could you sum it up in one word for, a high school athlete? Maybe he's a high school football player, maybe he's in some other sport. How would you sum it up for them?
Wow, one word. That's tough.
Or one phrase, if you could just like sum it up in a sentence as far as
Okay. Now that's I can do that. So in one phrase, I would say never give up on your dream, because you don't know how the package is going to be delivered to you.
Mm, okay. That's
And I
very
say
powerful.
that because I never in a million years, when I started playing football, I was a running back.
Mhm.
And so I was on the offensive side, and I was all about scoring touchdowns and all these other things. And I had the idea of going to the NFL, but never in a million years did I think I would be a defensive end. But the key was I wanted to go to the NFL. It never said what position or what number that was going to be on my chest. I
Mhm.
just wanted to go to the NFL. So don't don't be rigid in your mindset of what position you're going to play. Just be a football player,
Mm, I
or
love
be a
that.
be a be a be a player, because you
Yeah.
don't know how you'll how you'll grow, how you'll evolve, how your
Yeah.
body will change, and all those different things. You just don't know. So
Yeah.
never
That's
give up on it.
Yeah, that's great because it was a vision, right? It was this vision, and then it was not necessarily knowing how. I don't always know how it's going to happen, but it's this vision that I do know is going to happen. And it's that confidence in this is going to happen. How it happens, don't have the answers to that, but right, that's what you learn as you go. So I love your little summary there. Any last words that you want to share?
First of all, I just want to say I apologize during the first part of the interview. I didn't call you Dr. Jenna. I said Jenna, but the reason is because you did ask me how I wanted to be addressed when you first
Mhm.
introduced me. And I said, because of what I had to do to get it, that all pro is important. What you
Yeah.
had to do to become Dr. Jenna is very important. So
Well,
I
thank you.
apologize because you always have to. I know you had to go through some things to earn that doctorate. So Dr. Jenna, I apologize.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. I know it's meaningful when somebody has worked for something. And so just like you were all pro and
Absolutely,
you worked hard for that. So yeah, thank you.
of
Um,
course.
yeah, any other last words that you want to add to our discussion?
I thoroughly enjoyed this, and I've enjoyed this podcast, and I wish you all the success in the world.
Thank
And if
you.
there's anything I can do to continue to help you continue to grow, just reach out. You know how to
Okay.
find me.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you.